Thank you, Jill. It's always one of my fears to be the first one because now I've got to figure out how the computer works. I think we're on our way. Where is the presentation? There it is. Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's good to see your interest in the energy sector, the renewable energy sector, and how we think logistics plays into it, and I think it plays into it in a very big way. Our industry, renewable energy industry, is very focused on supply chain issues and feedstock supply issues. It's critical to what we're trying to do, and I'm going to try and hit the highlights of why that's true over the next few minutes. Just a very brief outline of what my company does. We're really two companies, Energy Launch Partners and Energy Launch Developments. I run the Energy Launch Developments aspects of our business, which is traditional renewable energy project development work. We focus on biomass and waste-based projects. There's 24 million acres of privately owned forests in the state of Georgia, so that tells you why we focus on biomass. We also provide strategic consulting and technology launch services for companies that are trying to enter or participate in what we think is going to be a very robust industry over the coming years. And I'm going to try and go in the right direction here. Hang on a second. There we go. I'm going to spend the reason I think supply chain is so critically important is because in today's economic environment, it is absolutely critical that projects are constructed in such a way that the banks like them. We can't do anything if we can't get a project financed. And to get projects financed today, it really takes two key components. You've got to have proven technologies involved, technologies that are commercially viable and have been proven. And it takes long-term supply and energy sales agreements to convince the banks that the projects are secure enough to finance. So focusing on feedstock and the supply chain side of things, what we've got to do is recognize that in states like Georgia, there is a very robust and well-oiled supply chain mechanism for moving wood to the pulp and paper industry and to other users in the forest products industry. But the interesting thing is, for us in the renewable energy business, this supply chain needs to be modified to become effective, because while it works very well, it's market-driven, and the banks struggle with getting comfortable that just relying on a robust supply and being able to deliver material on a day in and day out basis is good enough. So let me just take a minute and describe to you what the situation is today and how I think it's going to have to change to be more effective for renewable energy. The pulp and paper industry, as many of you I suspect already know, developed around a land base that, frankly, they owned. In 15 and 20 years ago, most of the trees that were grown for pulpwood were owned by the major participants in that industry. Over time, they've sold off that land base, whereas today the bulk, and Jill can speak to this much better than I, but the bulk of the acres of trees are owned by private non-industrial landowners. So the way that wood moves through the supply chain today is there is typically a wood buyer, someone who kind of coordinates the whole effort and actually has a contract with the landowner to sell his trees. And those trees are sold into a multitude of markets. That wood buyer will then coordinate logging contractors, trucking contractors, and fit the pieces together to move the wood either in tree length form or in some cases already chipped and sized in effect to be processed to the consuming mill. And this is a system that frankly it's just very much a day in and day out delivery process. Typically contracts are very short. A wood buyer may have a 1-year supply agreement, if that, and the system functions very well. The challenges, however, and where this industry, this logistics and supply chain industry can bring so much to this developing bioenergy market is there is a significant lack of efficiency in the utilization of field equipment, and that's due to a number of things. Market reliability. A mill may be looking for wood for 1 week and then say, look, we're full, don't bring it next week, we'll be back to you in a week or two. There's a lot of uncertainty in terms of deliveries, or maybe not a lot, but it's a significant amount. Obviously, diesel fuel is an extremely significant component. It runs the logging equipment. It obviously runs the trucks. As it goes up, the cost of delivery is heavily impacted. Chippers and grinders, pieces of mobile equipment that are used in the woods to size material for some of the markets, sit idle waiting for trailers to be refilled and hauled off to the consumer. And then acreage yields, the number of tons of wood per acre that can be recovered is significantly impacted by the type of products that are being collected. If it's wood chips and they're just chipping the tops, limbs, and understory in the woods, you have fairly low quantities per acre, which makes for a fairly inefficient system. Obviously, trucking is also impacted by some of the same issues, and also issues related to payloads. Being able to increase the trucking payloads for the logging industry would be a significant improvement. And being able to turn around trucks once they get to the mills so that they're not sitting and waiting 2 or 3 hours in a queue before they can unload, obviously critical to improvements that this industry can benefit from. As we address the issues of developing projects that satisfy the banks, we realize the projects are going to have to be vertically integrated. The landowners and the consumers are going to have to be closely linked so that you can actually see long-term supply agreements. And that's going to take higher yields per acre, or it will be helped by higher yields per acre, and you'll see more trees grown in different ways so that they can yield a more robust supply per acre, and trees that can be cut in shorter rotations and regrown and cut again. Energy acreage will become a thing of the future, and all of this will need improvements in the logging, trucking, and processing aspects of the business. So what do I see in the future? I see a supply chain that, as I said earlier, connects the landowner directly to the bioenergy plant through long-term supply agreements, and a linkage, a much more connected operation between the logging and the trucking and the processing services that are required to supply the fuel or the feedstock. By making a much better use of the equipment that's in the field, by reducing fuel consumption, by increasing payloads, all of these things are going to improve efficiency, and it's up to the logistics industry and the supply chain industry to help us figure this out. I don't know anybody in the renewable energy industry doing what I do that understands your business. And we really need a lot of assistance. We think that it's going to be critically important as we move forward that, that logistics improvements are made for our industry. With that, I will turn this over to the next speaker. I just want to recognize real quickly, I picked the brain of of Dr. Dale Green at the Warnell School of Forestry at the University of Georgia to compile some of my thoughts, and he's a recognized expert in this field, and the University of Georgia, through its Warnell School, has done a lot of work in trying to identify and solve some of the supply chain issues that the industry faces. I look forward to your questions. Jill?